My sister screamed at me in front of our entire family because I told my hungry daughter she could get another plate of food after she had already eaten 2 servings. She accused me of raising a daughter with no manners and said that taking more than 1 plate at someone else's house was inappropriate and greedy. The argument escalated when my mother joined my sister in criticizing my daughter's eating behavior and my parenting decisions. They said that I was teaching my daughter to be rude and inconsiderate by allowing her to eat multiple plates of food without asking permission from the host. But they completely ignored the context that my daughter works 2 part-time jobs to pay for college tuition and had not eaten anything all day before arriving at the dinner. She was genuinely hungry and needed substantial food after working long hours to support her educational goals. My sister had prepared an enormous amount of food for 8 people and kept emphasizing how much she had cooked and how proud she was of the elaborate meal. But when my hardworking daughter tried to take advantage of the abundant food after a day of labor, my sister acted like she was stealing resources from the family. The confrontation revealed that my family has been quietly judging my daughter's eating habits and work schedule for months, viewing her hunger and need for substantial meals as evidence of poor manners rather than the natural result of her demanding lifestyle. They have been interpreting her practical approach to food and nutrition as greediness and lack of consideration, rather than understanding that teenagers who work physical jobs need more calories than adults who sit at desks all day. The argument ended with my sister telling me that I had embarrassed her in front of the family and that my daughter's behavior proved that I had failed as a parent. She demanded that we leave her house immediately and said that we were no longer welcome at family gatherings. My mother supported my sister's decision and said that my daughter needed to learn proper etiquette before she would be allowed to attend future family events. She accused me of prioritizing my daughter's desires over respect for family rules and social expectations. But their reaction revealed that they care more about arbitrary etiquette rules than about feeding a hungry teenager who had been working all day to pay for her own education and future independence. I chose to defend my daughter's right to eat adequate food rather than forcing her to go hungry to satisfy my family's bizarre ideas about appropriate portion sizes and social manners. The family conflict that followed has forced me to choose between supporting my hardworking daughter and maintaining relationships with relatives who think that feeding hungry teenagers is inappropriate and rude. But let me take you back to show you how a simple family dinner became a battlefield over food, manners, and my family's hidden resentment toward my daughter's work ethic and independence. The dinner that destroyed our family relationships was supposed to be a casual, just because gathering at my sister's house, where she wanted to show off her cooking skills and spend time with relatives during a relaxed evening of food and conversation. My sister is an excellent cook who takes pride in preparing elaborate meals for family occasions. She had spent the afternoon preparing multiple dishes and kept emphasizing how much food she had made and how excited she was to share her culinary creations with everyone. When we arrived at her house, the dining room table was covered with serving dishes containing enough food to feed twice as many people as were actually present. My sister kept pointing out the abundance of food and encouraging everyone to eat as much as they wanted. My 16-year-old daughter had been working at both of her part-time jobs throughout the day and had not eaten anything substantial since early morning. She works as a server at a restaurant and also has a retail job, both of which require her to be on her feet for long hours. She uses the income from these jobs to pay for college tuition and expenses, demonstrating remarkable maturity and work ethic for someone her age. But the demanding schedule means that she often arrives at family events tired and hungry after long days of physical labor. When we sat down for dinner, my daughter filled her plate with reasonable portions of the various dishes that my sister had prepared. She ate everything on her first plate and then asked if she could get a second helping, which seemed normal given the amount of food available and her obvious hunger. My daughter's request for a second plate was met with no objection from my sister, who continued encouraging everyone to eat as much as they wanted and seemed pleased that her cooking was being appreciated by family members. My daughter took modest second portions of her favorite dishes and ate them while participating in family conversation about school, work, and future plans. She seemed grateful for the substantial meal after her long day of work and expressed appreciation for my sister's cooking efforts. But when my daughter finished her second plate and asked if she could get another serving, the atmosphere in the room suddenly changed. My sister looked at her with an expression of shock and surprise, as if my daughter had made an inappropriate or unexpected request. "My sister," said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "another plate." Her tone conveyed disapproval and disbelief that my daughter would want to continue eating after already having 2 servings of dinner. My daughter looked uncomfortable and uncertain about how to respond to my sister's obvious surprise about her continued hunger. She glanced at me with an expression that seemed to ask whether she had done something wrong by requesting more food. I immediately told my daughter that she could certainly get another plate if she was still hungry. I pointed out that she had been working all day without eating, and that my sister had prepared plenty of food for everyone to enjoy. My response seemed to reassure my daughter, who got up to get her third plate while I tried to smooth over the awkward moment that my sister's reaction had created. But my sister was clearly upset by my decision to override her implicit disapproval of my daughter's continued eating. She began making pointed comments about the amount of food that my daughter was consuming and questioning whether it was appropriate for someone to eat so much at someone else's house. I explained that my daughter had not eaten anything substantial all day due to her work schedule, and that she needed adequate nutrition after long hours of physical labor at her part-time jobs. I pointed out that my sister had made an enormous amount of food and had been encouraging everyone to eat as much as they wanted throughout the evening. But my sister continued expressing disapproval about my daughter's eating habits and my decision to allow her to take a third plate without asking permission from the host. The tension continued throughout the remainder of the dinner, with my sister making subtle comments about portion sizes and appropriate behavior at family gatherings. My daughter noticed the disapproval and seemed uncomfortable about continuing to eat, despite still being hungry after her long day of work. I tried to maintain normal conversation and encourage my daughter to ignore the subtle criticism, but the atmosphere had become strained and unwelcoming. When dinner officially ended, my sister approached me privately to express her frustration about my daughter's eating behavior and my decision to support her request for additional food. She said that allowing my daughter to take 3 plates of food was inappropriate and that I should have taught her better manners about eating at other people's houses. She argued that taking more than 1 plate of food without explicit permission from the host was rude and inconsiderate, regardless of the circumstances or the amount of food available. I pointed out that my daughter had been working all day and needed substantial nutrition, and that my sister had prepared enough food to feed twice as many people as were actually present at the dinner. I suggested that feeding a hungry teenager should be more important than enforcing arbitrary rules about appropriate portion sizes at family gatherings. But my sister was not convinced by my arguments, and continued insisting that my daughter's behavior had been inappropriate, and that my support for her eating habits was evidence of poor parenting. She said that other family members had noticed my daughter's large appetite at previous gatherings and had been commenting privately about her eating habits and lack of proper etiquette. This revelation shocked me because I had not realized that my family had been judging my daughter's nutritional needs and interpreting her healthy appetite as evidence of poor manners or inadequate parenting. I told my sister that I was disappointed to learn that family members had been criticizing my hardworking daughter behind our backs, instead of appreciating her work ethic and dedication to paying for her own education. But my sister insisted that work schedule and financial responsibility did not excuse inappropriate behavior at family gatherings, and that my daughter needed to learn proper etiquette regardless of her other admirable qualities. The conversation was becoming increasingly heated when my mother approached us and asked what we were discussing in such serious tones. My sister immediately explained the situation and asked for my mother's opinion about whether my daughter's eating behavior had been appropriate and whether my parenting response had been reasonable. My mother's reaction was immediate and supportive of my sister's position. She said that she agreed that taking 3 plates of food at someone else's house was inappropriate and demonstrated lack of proper training and social etiquette. She added that my daughter's eating habits had been concerning to her for some time and that she had been wondering whether I was teaching my daughter appropriate behavior for social situations. The fact that both my sister and my mother were criticizing my daughter's eating habits and my parenting decisions made me realize that this was not a simple disagreement about dinner etiquette, but a deeper conflict about family values and expectations. The confrontation that destroyed our family relationships erupted when my mother and sister joined forces to criticize my daughter's eating behavior and my parenting decisions in front of our entire extended family during what should have been a pleasant evening of food and conversation. My sister had initially approached me privately to express her disapproval of my daughter's request for a 3rd plate, but when my mother became involved in the discussion, the conversation quickly escalated into a public argument that included aunts, uncles, and cousins who had been enjoying the family gathering. My mother's first comment was that she agreed with my sister that taking 3 plates of food at someone else's house was inappropriate and demonstrated poor training in social etiquette and family manners. She said that my daughter's eating habits had been concerning to her for several family gatherings, and that she had been wondering whether I was adequately teaching my daughter appropriate behavior for social situations. But her criticism ignored the obvious context that my daughter works 2 demanding part-time jobs to pay for college tuition, and often arrives at family events genuinely hungry after long days of physical labor. I pointed out that my daughter had not eaten anything substantial all day due to her work schedule, and that she needed adequate nutrition after spending hours on her feet, serving customers and handling retail responsibility. I emphasized that my daughter was demonstrating remarkable maturity and work ethic by supporting her own education rather than expecting her parents to pay for college expenses. But my mother dismissed these explanations and insisted that work responsibilities did not excuse inappropriate behavior at family gatherings or justify taking excessive amounts of food without permission from the host. She said that proper etiquette required asking permission before taking additional servings, and that my daughter should have been more considerate of other family members who might also want to eat the food that my sister had prepared. My sister supported my mother's position by pointing out that she had spent considerable time and money preparing the elaborate meal, and that my daughter's consumption of 3 plates of food was taking advantage of her generosity and hospitality. But this argument was particularly frustrating because my sister had been emphasizing throughout the evening how much food she had prepared and encouraging everyone to eat as much as they wanted. She had made enough food to feed twice as many people as were actually present, and had been expressing pride in the abundance of dishes she had created for the family gathering. The contradiction between encouraging people to eat freely and then criticizing my daughter for actually taking advantage of the abundant food revealed that my family's real concern was not about food scarcity, but about their disapproval of my daughter's appetite and eating habits. I told my mother and sister that their criticism was unfair and unreasonable given the circumstances of my daughter's work schedule and the obvious abundance of food that had been prepared for the gathering. I pointed out that feeding a hungry teenager should be a priority over enforcing arbitrary etiquette rules, especially when the teenager in question was working multiple jobs to pay for her own education and future independence. But my response only made my family more angry and defensive about their position. They accused me of making excuses for my daughter's inappropriate behavior and failing to teach her proper respect for family rules and social expectations. My sister said that my attitude proved that I was prioritizing my daughter's desires over respect for family relationships, and that I was enabling behavior that would embarrass my daughter in professional and social situations throughout her adult life. She argued that learning proper etiquette at family gatherings was essential preparation for business dinners and social events where my daughter would need to demonstrate appropriate manners and consideration for hosts. But her concerns about my daughter's future professional success seemed hypocritical, given that my daughter was already demonstrating exceptional work ethic and responsibility by maintaining 2 part-time jobs while attending high school. My mother added that my defensive attitude about the criticism was preventing me from recognizing legitimate concerns about my daughter's social development and preparation for adult responsibilities. She said that family members were trying to help my daughter learn appropriate behavior, and that my resistance to their feedback was depriving my daughter of valuable guidance about social expectations. But their characterization of their criticism as helpful guidance ignored the fact that they were judging a hardworking teenager for eating adequate food after a day of physical labor. The argument attracted the attention of other family members who had been enjoying the dinner and conversation in other parts of my sister's house. My aunts and uncles approached our group to ask what was causing the heated discussion and whether they could help resolve whatever disagreement was creating tension during the family gathering. My sister immediately explained the situation from her perspective, emphasizing that my daughter had taken 3 plates of food without asking permission, and that I had supported her inappropriate behavior instead of correcting her poor manners. She described my daughter's eating habits as evidence of greediness and lack of consideration for other family members, while portraying herself as the victim of inconsiderate guests who had taken advantage of her hospitality. My mother supported my sister's account by adding that my daughter's behavior had been concerning for several family gatherings and that my parenting approach was enabling inappropriate social behavior. But their version of events completely ignored the context of my daughter's work schedule and nutritional needs, presenting her normal appetite as evidence of character flaws, rather than the natural result of her demanding lifestyle. I tried to provide the missing context by explaining that my daughter had been working all day at her 2 part-time jobs and had not eaten anything substantial before arriving at the dinner. I emphasized that she was using her income to pay for college tuition and that her work schedule often resulted in irregular eating patterns that required substantial meals when food was available. I pointed out that my sister had prepared an enormous amount of food and had been encouraging everyone to eat freely throughout the evening. But my extended family seemed more interested in supporting my sister's position than in understanding the circumstances that had led to my daughter's eating behavior. My aunt said that regardless of work schedule or hunger levels, proper etiquette required asking permission before taking additional servings at someone else's house. My uncle added that learning social manners was important for young people and that my daughter would benefit from understanding appropriate behavior for family gatherings. Their responses revealed that they were more concerned about enforcing social rules than about ensuring that a hardworking teenager received adequate nutrition after a day of physical labor. The conversation reached a breaking point when my sister accused me of embarrassing her in front of the family by refusing to acknowledge that my daughter's behavior had been inappropriate. She said that my defensive attitude was making the situation worse, and that my refusal to correct my daughter's manners was disrespectful to her role as host and her efforts to create a pleasant family gathering. She demanded that I apologize for my daughter's behavior and commit to teaching her better etiquette before attending future family events. But I refused to apologize for allowing my hungry daughter to eat adequate food, and I told my sister that her priorities were backwards if she cared more about arbitrary etiquette rules than about feeding family members who needed nutrition. I said that my daughter's work ethic and commitment to her education were more important than her ability to navigate complicated social rules about appropriate portion sizes at family dinners. My response triggered an explosive reaction from my sister, who accused me of attacking her values and refusing to acknowledge legitimate concerns about my daughter's social development. She said that my attitude proved that I was a poor parent who was raising a daughter without proper respect for family relationships and social expectations. She told me that my daughter and I were no longer welcome in her house and that we needed to leave immediately, rather than continuing to disrupt the family gathering with our inappropriate behavior and defensive attitudes. My mother supported my sister's decision and said that my daughter would not be invited to future family events until she learned proper etiquette and demonstrated appropriate respect for family rule. The public nature of this confrontation was humiliating for my daughter, who had been in another room during most of the argument, but returned to witness the final explosive exchange between me and my family member. She looked confused and hurt by the intense criticism of her eating behavior and my parenting decisions, especially since she had been trying to express gratitude for my sister's cooking throughout the evening. I told my family that their treatment of my hardworking daughter was unreasonable and cruel, and that I would rather leave their gathering than force my daughter to apologize for eating adequate food after a day of labor. We gathered our belongings and left my sister's house while she continued expressing her anger about our behavior and our refusal to acknowledge the validity of her concerns about social etiquette. The aftermath of the family dinner disaster has been swift and decisive, with my sister and mother maintaining their position that my daughter's eating behavior was inappropriate and that my parenting response proved my failure to teach proper social etiquette. Within 24 hours of leaving my sister's house, I received text messages from multiple family members expressing their disappointment in my defensive attitude and my refusal to acknowledge legitimate concerns about my daughter's manners. My sister sent a long message explaining that she'd been planning the family dinner for weeks and had been excited to share her cooking with relatives who rarely had opportunities to gather together for elaborate meals. She said that my daughter's consumption of 3 plates of food had been selfish and inconsiderate, taking advantage of her hospitality while demonstrating poor training and appropriate social behavior. She emphasized that the issue was not about the amount of food available or my daughter's work schedule, but about basic respect for family rules and social expectations that should have been taught during childhood. My mother followed with her own message supporting my sister's position and expressing concern about my daughter's preparation for adult social situations where proper etiquette would be essential for professional and personal success. She said that family gatherings were opportunities for young people to learn appropriate behavior through practice and feedback, and that my defensive attitude was preventing my daughter from receiving valuable guidance. But their messages revealed that they still did not understand or care about the context of my daughter's hunger and work schedule, continuing to interpret her nutritional needs as evidence of greediness and poor character. My extended family members have been divided in their responses to the conflict, with some supporting my sister's concerns about etiquette, while others questioning whether the criticism of my daughter was fair and reasonable. My aunt called to express her confusion about the intensity of the argument and to ask whether there might be underlying family tensions that had contributed to the explosive confrontation over dinner behavior. She said that while she understood the importance of teaching young people proper manners, she was surprised by how quickly the disagreement had escalated into personal attacks and permanent exclusion from family gatherings. My uncle sent a text message suggesting that both sides might have overreacted to what should have been a minor disagreement about social expectations, and that the family conflict was disproportionate to the original incident. But other family members have supported my sister's position and expressed their own concerns about my daughter's eating habits and my parenting approach to social situations. They have shared observations about previous family gatherings where my daughter's appetite and eating behavior had seemed excessive compared to other teenagers and adults present at the events. These revelations have been particularly painful because they prove that my family has been judging my daughter's nutritional needs and work-related hunger for months without expressing their concerns directly or attempting to understand the circumstances that influence her eating pattern. My daughter has been hurt and confused by the family conflict that erupted around her eating behavior, especially since she had been trying to express gratitude and appreciation for my sister's cooking throughout the evening. She asked me whether she had really done something wrong by eating 3 plates of food and whether she should have asked permission before taking additional servings despite my sister's encouragement to eat freely. I have tried to reassure her that her behavior was completely appropriate given her work schedule and hunger level, and that the family's criticism was unfair and unreasonable. I have explained that some people prioritize social rules over practical needs, and that their disapproval does not reflect any actual wrongdoing on her part. But the experience has made my daughter more self-conscious about eating at family gatherings and more aware of potential criticism from relatives who might be judging her appetite and nutritional needs. She has expressed reluctance to attend future family events where she might face similar scrutiny and criticism about her eating behavior and social manners. I've been reflecting on whether there were better ways to handle the situation that might have avoided the explosive confrontation while still supporting my daughter's right to eat adequate food. I could have asked my sister privately about her concerns before allowing my daughter to take a 3rd plate, potentially avoiding the public disagreement that embarrassed everyone involved. But I also recognize that my daughter should not have to ask permission to eat adequate food at family gatherings, especially when the host has been encouraging people to eat freely and has prepared abundant food. The principle of feeding hungry family members should take priority over arbitrary etiquette rules, particularly when the hungry person is a teenager who has been working all day to support her own education. I have decided that I will not apologize for supporting my daughter's nutritional needs or force her to acknowledge wrongdoing that she did not commit. The family relationships that have been damaged by this conflict were apparently built on conditional acceptance that required my daughter to suppress her normal appetite and pretend that her work schedule did not create legitimate hunger. If maintaining these relationships requires my daughter to go hungry at family gatherings or to apologize for eating adequate food after working all day, then these relationships are not worth preserving. My daughter's work ethic, educational goals, and physical well-being are more important than satisfying relatives who care more about social rules than about the practical needs of hardworking teenagers. I have been exploring alternative ways to maintain connections with family members who are willing to accept my daughter as she is, rather than demanding that she conform to arbitrary expectations about appropriate appetite and eating behavior. Some family members have reached out to express their support for my position and their own discomfort with the harsh criticism that my daughter received during the dinner confrontation. These relatives have acknowledged that working teenagers need substantial nutrition and that family gatherings should be welcoming environments where young people feel comfortable eating adequate food without fear of judgment. I am focusing on building relationships with family members who share these values while accepting that some relatives will continue to prioritize social rules over practical compassion. The most important lesson from this experience has been understanding that defending my daughter's basic needs and dignity is more important than maintaining peace with family members who impose unreasonable expectations on hardworking teenagers. My daughter's nutritional requirements and work-related hunger are not character flaws that need to be corrected through social pressure and criticism. She deserves to eat adequate food at family gatherings without having to justify her appetite or apologize for her body's normal response to physical labor and irregular eating schedules. Family members who cannot accept these basic facts about teenage nutrition and work-related hunger are not people whose approval is worth seeking or maintaining. Have you ever had to defend your child's basic needs against family criticism? How do you handle situations where relatives impose unreasonable social expectations on hardworking teenagers? What advice would you give to parents whose families prioritize etiquette rules over practical compassion? Share your thoughts about family gatherings, teenage nutrition, and social expectations in the comments below.